And from the 4G test, we move on to a 4G phone, but this phone has quite a bit going for it. This is the MicroMax Sliver. It's very thin, like I already said right in the beginning. In fact, it is incredibly thin. So today, we'll do the test in many different ways. We'll talk about the phone. We'll review the phone, the ergonomics and everything else. We will talk about just how thin a phone like this and what do people feel when they hold a phone this thin in their hand. It's great to look at it, but what does it feel when you actually hold it in your hand and use the phone? You, of course, have to cut the phone with this. Then we're going to take a look at MicroMax and its ambitions. It wants to sell this phone all over the world. Therefore, they want to be a world-dominating company. Is this the right phone to launch all those amazing ambitions? So we look at the phone in many different ways. First, let's just take a look at how thin is it?
A little tricky, as in I might just lose it.
It's very light and it's very easy to handle.
It's quite nice actually, but I'm also using a very thin some other company phone, but this is even lighter than that, so I'm pretty happy with this phone.
It's very good and easy to carry, lightweight.
Can get lost anytime. It's so thin.
We all remember the turf war amongst the Chinese giants like Xiaomi, Oppo and Vivo, who all battled for the crown of the slimmest smartphone in the entire world. Xiaomi pitched the eLife S 5.1 at 5.1 mm thickness. Oppo followed with the R5 at 4.85 mm. In the end, Vivo earned the bragging rights with their flagship, the Vivo X5 Max, that came in at 4.75 mm. The battle to be the slimmest still wages on, so the battleground this time has shifted to the slimmest 4G phone, and currently, the Xiaomi eLife S7 is the slimmest at 5.5 mm. But the 5.1 mm thin MicroMax Sliver 5 has reignited that battle. The phone is stunningly beautiful to look at and bears a striking resemblance to the Xiaomi eLife S 5.1. We all remember the sexiest phone in the world, don't we? MicroMax also claims the device is the lightest smartphone in the world, weighing in at a shocking airborne 97 grams. So now that you've seen how thin the phone is and we've compared it to the 2 or 3 other very thin phones in the Indian market, let's take a look at everything else on the outer side, from the look, the materials and the screen. The phone might look a little flimsy due to its thin structure, but rest assured, the Corning Gorilla Glass 3 provides sufficient protection. It sports a 4.8-inch AMOLED HD display with a 720p by 1280p resolution, clocking in at 306 ppi, which outputs great color and looks really sharp. A metallic rim crafted out of aircraft-grade aluminium runs around the device, with the left sporting the standard volume rocker and power button, and on the right is the micro SIM slot. It's still inconclusive whether devices this thin are uncomfortable to grip and hold, but with the slippery glass front and back, you will find yourself holding this phone a little tighter than you normally hold any other phone. So great materials used. The phone's actually quite good looking. The screen is really great. But what are the specs inside? Now, for a phone this thin, usually the specs are compromised. Did that happen with MicroMax? The phone runs on a 1.2 GHz quad-core Snapdragon 410 processor coupled with 2 GB RAM. For the ones for whom 16 GB internal storage isn't sufficient, well, I've got bad news. There isn't a SD card slot. Something to be happy about, on the other hand, is that the OS on the phone runs the latest Android 5.0. The phone takes a slight hit in the optics department with only a 8 megapixel rear camera and a 5 megapixel front snapper. So not too much of a compromise for a phone this thin. The only part that I thought was, of course, not up to scratch was the 2000 mAh battery. But then where else are they going to fit a battery? And I mean, have you seen how thin this is? Okay, now for everything else that we think about the phone. And then when we come back, this Apple meets this phone. The battery department isn't a power generator with a 2000 mAh battery, which won't last a day. The quad-core Snapdragon 410 inside the phone will keep you hunting for either a charging port, or you might have to carry a small little power bank. So while it does seem there are a few compromises on the phone, do remember, you do have to give up something to get something. Here you're sacrificing a few features for the amazing slimness and the light as air phone. So CellGuru, final verdict on the MicroMax Sliver is this. It's very well built, super thin, great start for MicroMax in the super thin category. It's very aggressively priced, as always with MicroMax. The specs are good. It's a good way to get into the international market, and they've got Hugh Jackman with them. So MicroMax, we're giving you a good grade on this phone, but does it cut the Apple? Well, let's find out. Okay, I'm still wondering why I'm doing this, but as I've been asked to do it, I really have my doubts. Okay, here we go. Okay. It actually did cut an Apple. Like I said, CellGuru team, if this is symbolic, then send the video to Apple. Is MicroMax cutting into Apple's market worldwide? From here, we'll go into Market Watch and find out what's up, what's new.